So today we are not holding back. We are talking about lithium batteries, and we're going to talk about why people put them in their boats and their kayaks, some of the strengths that lithium has got going on for it, as well as some of the challenges. As we go through this, we'll address some myths and concerns with the batteries. And if you're interested in a full boat deck out of lithium batteries, well, you've come to the right place. We're giving some away. Let's get into it. There's a lot to get through here, but I'm going to try and keep things simple, interesting, and relevant. These are the things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about how we installed lithium into the boat and it completely changed the performance of the boat. We're going to talk about the rig, what we installed and why we installed it, the actual reasons why lithium is king, and we'll talk about some things to watch and be careful if you're buying lithium, because not all lithium is equal. And like I said at the start, we're giving away a full deck out of lithium. So we're giving away a 24 volt battery, a 12 volt battery, and a hybrid cranking battery that is the flagship of the FPV power range. It's a hybrid battery with a supercapacitor in it, and I'll talk about why that thing is special during this review. Now, they haven't sponsored the video, and this isn't a paid review, but I will mention that the batteries that are in the boat at the moment, the ones that I'll be reviewing, are not mine. I've still got my blue tops in the back of the garage here that are waiting, and truthfully I really don't want to go back to them. But I've been a full paying customer for FPV Power for a number of years now. They initially got into the kayak market, which is where I kind of knew them from. Literally every kayaker here in Australia that I know uses an FPV Power battery to power the live wells, their sounders, and their power poles. And when I mentioned that I wanted to look at something like lithium, they were more than happy to loan me these batteries to test, and this is the review. So when I purchased the boat initially, it was rigged with a 36 volt system on the left hand side, and that was made up of 3 12 volt batteries that were rigged in series. They were blue tops, and whilst they were ridiculously heavy because they were lead acid, they actually didn't have a lot of grunt to them. They only held about 55 amp hour. That meant I was very much in the game of use this boat once during the day and then come back and recharge it every night with no exceptions with one session, so that I knew I had enough power to get through the next day. On the right hand side of the boat, I had a 12 volt blue top that weighed in at 38 kilo, and I was a little bit concerned about that battery because for some reason it wasn't taking the charge for the engine, and I didn't know how old it was. I got the feeling that it was starting to drop a cell. The bigger issue out of all of that though was the weight and balance of the boat. Because the boat was so tail heavy, I would notice it on plane, and whilst the boat was still impressive in how it got up and went, every time I hit 50 mile an hour, I would start to chine walk. And it did it quite violently. If I had my family on board and that little bit of extra weight, that weight dropped by 5, and at 45 mile an hour, it started to chine walk. If the live wells were full, it was 43 mile an hour. And that relationship that had to do with weight told me that it was a weight problem and a balance issue that I was experiencing. In the first 3 months of owning this boat, I never got the boat to full trim and was generally worried about what I was going to do to get this boat into the correct balance. And the last reason I wanted to move away from lead acid was because they have a significantly shorter life cycle than lithium. Lead acid typically cycles to its full extent around about 3 to 450, 500 times at the deepest cycle, whilst lithium is rated to cycle at least 2,500 times. And that means my one set of batteries will probably outlast the life cycle of my boat. Not only did I not want to change my batteries every couple of years, but I also wanted to ensure that the power that was being supplied was stable, as I didn't drop cells randomly. Sure, you might have circuit breakers and whatnot that protect all your electronics from irregular voltages, and I feel as though those kind of control measures are all reactive. I'd much rather have the stable power source to start with and be proactive than have to rely on a fuse or some sort of control board to regulate the power that's being supplied. So the result was we gutted the boat from the lead acid, cancer, and dropped in 3x FPV Power batteries into the boat. Now I'll talk about how we did that in a moment. We'll talk about some schematics, but I will talk about how the boat changed first of all. The first and most obvious one was that I gained a bucket load of area in the boot, and it freed up some physical space for me to actually throw bags and storage items in the back here. Secondly, the weight was immediately noticeable in the boat. Out of the box, I was picking up the batteries with one finger or one hand and throwing the cranking battery up in the air. It was unbelievable. I went from 107 kilos down to 37 kilos. And I also gained 50% battery capacity when doing that. In terms of the performance of the boat, the changes were absolutely phenomenal. And it wasn't just the change in weight in terms of like a power to weight ratio, it was where the weight was located. It was effectively at the furthest rear point possible in the boat, and was like having a 107 kilo grown man stand at the back of the boat whilst you were trying to drive it. If you consider your boat, I'm sure you could appreciate how that might affect the performance on your boat. With the weight removed and the center of gravity moving forward, the stability in the boat increased 100-fold. The thing became like glue, and for the first time since I owned the boat, I was able to get to full trim and really let her rip. Full live wells with passengers. I got an extra 20% speed, and the boat was like glue in the chop, and I finally got to see what made the Phoenix hulls so popular. So what the change to lithium in my boat has done has been quite significant. I've now got the stable power source, and I can feel confident about throwing electronics in without frying them. And I'm seeing that on my voltmeter. I'm seeing a nice, stable, constant voltage being supplied throughout the boat. The hybrid battery that's used to starting recharges itself in about 3 to 4 seconds, so I've always got that confidence that the battery is full and ready to go again. And lastly, the most important part, the boat is now stable at speed and it feels great. I feel confident behind it, driving with me, my wife, my 2 kids on it, and we're not overloaded and out of balance, and it has not shine walked once since. So now you know the changes that I've had with moving to lithium. Let's talk about the rig. So 3 batteries in total went in: a 12 volt, a 24 volt, and a hybrid. Now I'll show you the schematic at the end of this, so if you want to build something similar, go ahead and use that. On the trolling motor side, we dropped in a 24 volt, 80 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery. Now I'll probably go back to a 36 in the future, but the 24 fit nicely with a bit of a comparison I'm doing for the Lowrance Ghost review at the moment. I ran 6 meters of 6 gauge tinned cable that runs through an isolation switch that I control, and it's got an inbuilt 50 amp hour circuit breaker. On the top of the battery, we also added a cable with some ends and some plugs there so that we could quickly snap in a charger when I wanted to charge the battery. Now, over the last 4 months, honestly, I can't fault this battery. It's provided a really nice stable platform and voltage to the Lowrance Ghost that I've got on the front, and it hasn't suffered from that voltage sag that you traditionally get with lead acid. I'm getting that really nice consistent 13.2-ish volts throughout the range until the battery starts to die off at around about 20%, where it drops down to 12.8. The 20 amp charger that I got with it as well is an absolute beast, and it almost takes no time to charge the thing at the end of the day, so that is really handy. I will say for my 18.5 foot glass boat, I probably want to move this to a 110 amp hour battery. Now with heavy use on the motor, I got 2.5 days out of the battery, and as a tournament guy, I probably want 3+ days, and that's the pre-fish and then day 1 and day 2. Not only that, but maybe on a long weekend I can go away and know that I don't have to charge my battery at all. Now FPV don't actually make this 80 amp hour size. Typically it is just a tester that I have been playing with, but I'd consider the 75 amp hour option if you're the type of person that stays at caravan parks, powered sites, cabins, or maybe your boat is the type of boat that doesn't leave the shed for more than 1 day. Technically, because not all power is equal, if you were to have at the moment and be happy with your 2x100 amp hour lead acid batteries, that technically is equivalent to around about that 75 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery. So that there is the 24 volt side of the boat. On the right hand side, the 12 volt side is a pretty unique system, and I'm pretty pumped to have tried it. So here is the first caution in the lithium space. Do not use your general purpose lithium iron phosphate batteries to start an engine. It is not a cranking battery. Whilst the cells and the battery is really good for low discharge rates, they cop an absolute hammering if you have a high discharge rate or you use them for cranking. Not only do the cells take a battering, but the BMS can do damage to the battery and the onboard electronics of the boat. So get lithium that is specifically designed for cranking your engine. So at the core of my 12 volt side, at the center of the grid, is a hybrid battery that is made up of two parts. Internally, I have a 25 amp hour 12 volt battery that is supplying power to a supercapacitor. That supercapacitor has the ability to dump energy at 1900 amps. Now, at the moment, I believe that FPV Power might be the only guys that have got this battery, this hybrid type battery with the supercapacitor, and the figures on it are actually kind of amazing. It's got a cycle rate of 1 million cycles, and at 1900 amps can basically start anything. To give you an idea, this is the thing that I fly at work, and she uses 500 amps, 550 amps in certain scenarios to crank over a turbine engine. So when you consider that, and you consider starting your outboard, you know it's not going to have a problem at all with that. So whilst the supercapacitor dumps its load really, really quickly, it also recharges really quickly, and it takes 3 to 4 seconds to recharge it back up to 100% after you've started your engine. So what's the purpose then of having this 25 amp hour battery sitting in reserve within the hybrid unit? And the answer is because if you go to crank your engine and it doesn't start, maybe because of fuel or something mechanical, you might be in a situation where you've emptied the supercapacitor and you don't have a working engine to then recharge the supercapacitor. The point of the battery is in that situation to top up the supercapacitor. And again, it only takes 3 to 4 seconds to get that supercapacitor back up to 100%. So that's the point of having that small battery there. In terms of the circuit, it's not complicated. The hybrid battery is rigged directly to the engine and starts the engine and takes charge from the alternator. To provide a bank of power to the remaining grid and all the other electronics, we've added a 12 volt 75 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery. Now it's rigged through the VSR and will receive charge from the alternator and the engine. However, only after the VSR tells it that the hybrid battery is fully charged. It's the boss basically of who gets the charge and ensures the hybrid battery is charged first, then opens the relay and charges the 75 amp hour battery. When the engine is off, the VSR will allow access to both the batteries and allow me to use 100 amp hours of usable 12 volt battery power to the remaining system. When the batteries finally drop to 12.8 volts, which happens to be around about 20% power remaining, the VSR will isolate and the hybrid cranking battery from the electronics and ensure the engine will always have power to start, always. With this system and a working outboard, it is impossible to run out of 12 volt power. One thing that I am missing though is a way to charge my 24 volt side from my 12 volt side, and that is coming. Watch this space. Now, I'm not into making those idle claims though, so I went ahead and I tested. I turned everything on the boat. I used the boat batteries to charge GoPros, cameras, my phone, anything that I could find. I just drained the thing with batteries, and finally at 11 o'clock at night, the VSR isolated the hybrid cranking battery. I couldn't start the engine that night because it was too late and I'd annoyed the neighbors, so I went out the next morning and then this happened. So if you made it this far, congratulations. This is the giveaway. A big shout out, of course, to FPV Power for not only letting me test their equipment in my boat and review it, but also allowing me to give the batteries away. So we are giving away a 12 volt 75 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery with charger. We're giving a 24 volt 80 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery with charger, and I'm giving away a brand new hybrid cranking battery, the one that I've just talked about so much. All of that comes to a total of this, and I'd recommend if you are looking at purchasing lithium for your boat that you give these guys a call, not only because the product's been great for me, but also they offer a one-on-one consult where they talk about what you need, your boat, and they can basically give you a bit of an idea about the ideal circuit and how to rig it, what batteries would be suited to you. There's a 5-year warranty on the batteries, and all the house batteries come with a charger. So to enter, you need to do 2 things. The first, on this channel, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below on what your favorite battery would be. Which one that you would be interested in purchasing. The second thing you need to do is go over to the FPV, either Instagram or Facebook pages, find this post. You're gonna need to share it and tag 3 mates in the comments. Do those 2 things, and in 2 weeks time, I'll go through the comments below and randomly choose a winner, and then I'll go to the FPV pages and confirm that you are a follower. And the batteries will be yours. So get clicking. So let's talk about some key points and some safety items with lithium, because understanding this bit will stop you from blowing up your boat. So the first and the most important is to do your own research. Use the topics that I talk about as a bit of a guide, but I spent a good 2 weeks researching and reading papers before I got in front of this camera, or let alone put batteries in my boat. I would 100% definitely avoid reading the threads or taking serious advice from threads on Facebook, in particular the comments. I reckon in the last month I've seen a couple of threads of lithium come up, and I reckon about 50% of them come in complete contradiction to some of the papers and the info that I've read. So do a bit of research from a credible source. Number 2, do not use a general purpose lithium ion phosphate battery to start your engine. They're not designed for cranking. You'll either damage your engine, the electronics, or the battery itself. Number 3, not all lithium is the same. The term lithium ion is an umbrella for a number of different batteries that contain lithium as a component of the battery. The lithium you want on your battery is LiFePO4, lithium ion phosphate. And the reason you need to be conscious about this is because lithium in some states can be quite dangerous. We all remember the Samsung phones a couple of years ago that were combusting and basically banned from air travel. And these 3 crashes are examples of where lithium combusted and either killed everybody on board or destroyed the aircraft. I'm sure you've heard of lithium exploding and burning at ridiculous rates, and it is 100% a thing. Understand though, and keenly, that lithium ion phosphate is safe. This stuff can be stabbed, it can be wet, it can be put on fire, it can be short-circuited. Sure, the battery might be destroyed as a result of those things, but it does not distribute heat, start fires, or explode. You want to make sure that the battery you have is from a reputable source that is actually providing that product, not an eBay battery from China. That way you know there's an Australian standard, an Australian company, and the lithium that you are paying for is the right lithium that is advertised and the one that you want. Number 4, the electric trolling motors that we have that are brushless are designed to work with a lithium battery. And that's not a marine thing specifically, that is a power plant being brushless, working with a power source that is lithium. Those 2 match and they go together. The conjecture on at the moment is whether your trolling motor that you may own that has brushes, whether those brushes will be damaged by using the higher voltage or higher output of a lithium battery. The general consensus here is that if you run your electric motor at a lower rating, you get around the problem, if even a problem does exist. Number 5, inside every lithium ion phosphate battery, there is a battery management system, or BMS. It's designed to stop the battery or keep it safe from complete discharge, and it chops it off at 5%. We've got 5% remaining, it stops the battery. It's designed to keep the battery from overcharge and will detect that, as well as under temperature or over temperature conditions. It's like a bit of a health monitoring system. And this is important to understand because you might have seen a bulletin that Mercury put out 2 months ago saying that lithium was not recommended as a cranking battery for Mercury, and they couldn't warranty any of their components on their engine if you're doing that. And this is a really important and key thing. If you're on plane doing 60+ miles an hour and the BMS registers that the battery is either overcharged, too cold, or too hot, it will trip off. And out of nowhere, your battery will be disconnected from the engine. Now let me read this, but Merck specifically say this will cause unpredictable vessel operation, including the possibility of engine shutdown. They then continue to say, this will likely cause engine stall, forced idle, which may lead to a loss of control of a vessel. Now picture yourself on a bend doing 60+ miles an hour with your family in the boat with you, and you're in trouble. So this is the risk that Mercury are trying to manage. The risk, or the probability and likelihood of that risk eventuating, is questionable, but I'm not going to take it with my family. It doesn't escape me though that Mercury would have issued this bulletin full and well knowing that would have impacted somebody financially. So that probably tells me that there is a case somewhere of this happening. So this is where that supercapacitor comes in and why I wanted to try this hybrid cranking battery. If the BMS internally in that cranking battery shuts off, well, it's only taking care of the reserve battery. Supercapacitor there is maintaining the loop and will not cut out. The current will always have a constant flow, and this problem is not a factor when using that battery. So if you're looking to buy a starter battery that has a BMS inbuilt in it, I'd be looking to understand how that battery solved the problem that Merc is highlighting. All right, that was an epic amount of information, but I will leave you with one last point, and that is to watch this space. As importers get used to lithium, as lithium gets into the market and people start to sell some products that are lithium based, and brushless is a thing that is a bit of a standard, you will find that promoters and the narrative around lithium does change from that conservative, standoffish one to a more positive, let's all give it a go, and will become the industry standard. Again, do your own research and be completely comfortable with whatever it is that you end up putting in your boat. I hope you enjoyed the video, stay safe. Remember the giveaway, I'll see you next time.